So they say that third time's a charm, and I'm really hoping that is the case here with the Mi Notebook Air 13. This is the third revision, the 2018 model. Not that the previous models were bad, but they did suffer from a problem that I criticized quite heavily, and that was the cooling really wasn't sufficient enough when you started to do video encoding or you were gaming, so pushing both the CPU and GPU on this machine. Those other previous models would get up to 50 degrees centigrade to the touch. Now Xiaomi claim that they have solved that, so we've got three key changes on this model. That is the new chipset, which is now the Kaby Lake R. That's a quad core, and performance is up about 40%, which is really great. I do love that new chipset that I tested out in the Mi Notebook Pro line. That's the 15.6-inch model from Xiaomi. And we've got this dark gray color, so that is also copying the same color that we have on the Mi Notebook Pro. And then of course the cooling, that has been improved apparently. If you look on Xiaomi's website, they claim up to 63% cooling performance, and the copper cooling transfer pipe is apparently about 36% wider, and they've got new cooling fins. So we'll definitely be testing that out in detail. We'll have a peek at the internals here and look around and see if we can see any changes. So it comes double boxed. I picked this one up here from geekbuying.com. They're the only guys that seem to have stock at the moment. And I got it shipped out with DHL, but be careful of this. You can get hit with some rather hefty charges and taxes. I had to pay 87 euros on this. And as you see, it is really well padded here. So this box is still factory sealed, and what this means is it's going to have Windows 10 in Chinese. The quickest way to get over that problem is to actually just upgrade to Windows 10 Pro, and then you can install an English language pack, but I'll run through that with you. So there we go, the notebook in that nice gray color. Really do like that change. Very similar, in fact exactly the same layout of the packaging as the previous model. So here we've got like an instruction manual and whatnot. That is going to be all in Chinese, so no surprises there. We have a Type-C to Type-C cable now, so just like the Mi Notebook Pro. And then our charger here, which is rather small, and you flick out the two-prong US style. Of course, that's Chinese US. And this is rated to 20 volts, 3.2 amps max power output. So the exact same power supply as the Mi Notebook Pro. The other side just has that Type-C connector. So no changes to the rear of the device. It comes wrapped up in this plastic, and we do have a sticker on the back with Dolby Audio. So it's got those AKG speakers. I'll give you a sample of those later on, but they tend to sound pretty good. So I'm going to dive straight into the internals here to start out with. So you need a T5 Torx bit to open this up, remove all those Torx screws. Now there is one that is hidden under this foot here, so you have to remember to pull that up. And we'll check out the cooling on this and see how they have improved things with the larger thermal transfer pipe. So the case does take some effort to pry it off. There's little plastic clips around the outside that clip it, and it will crack off. It feels like you're going to break something, but you won't actually. So we have a 39 watt-hour battery. We have a PCIe x4 SSD. Now this is a Samsung PM961. Hopefully this will be running at the full x4 speeds, not like the Mi Notebook Pro. When I first got that one, it was only x2 speed due to a problem with the BIOS, but later that was corrected and further updates, BIOS updates that came through from Xiaomi from their official website. Another SATA 3 drive here that you can install if you wanted to, up to 2 gigabytes, whatever the capacity is now, sorry, terabytes. And here we have the wireless AC, which is an 8265. So they have updated that. So it's a slightly faster, better version there from Intel. Up the top here, we have 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now you cannot get 16 gigabytes on this model, and you cannot expand upon that RAM. So if you need 16, you have to go and get the Mi Notebook Pro. On each corner we have these AKG speakers, and as I said, I'll give you a sample of those later on. Now onto the cooling here. As you can see, we've got the GPU right here. This is the CPU, of course, and they do have a larger copper transfer heat pipe. So this is wider, I can see that already. And if you have a look at the fins there on the cooler, we've got a larger fan, this one right here, and then a little tiny smaller fan. So that hasn't changed from the previous models, but what has changed is look at all those fins they have put in there. So they've increased the amount of those fan blades, the fins in there, to push out more air, which is hopefully what is going to keep this a lot cooler than the previous generations. But of course I will test that out. So what you're looking at right now is one of the USB 3 ports and the Type-C port there. So we've got full Type-C support on this model, and that is the hinge at the top there, which is screwed in. So everything's screwed in. Build quality overall, the internals here look really good. Now just weighed it, it weighs 1.325 kilos, so it's a few grams heavier than the previous generation. And the thickness is exactly the same, around 14.2 millimeters. So the lid, the grey looks really nice. There's no logo, so minimalistic design, which I do like personally. Pressing down on the lid, there's a little bit of flex, but it is quite solid. So just like the other models, I'm able to open that up one-handed, and the hinge feels quite stiff. It's not bad at all. There's a little bit of wobble there, but that's kind of normal. And then our keyboard, which to me doesn't look like it has changed much. In fact, the keys look a lot similar and more like the ones from the Mi Notebook Pro, which is great. So if it's like the 2017 model, this could be a Synaptics touchpad. Hopefully it's running the Windows Precision drivers. Fingerprint reader is of course embedded in here, just like the 2017 model, which introduced that. A pleasant surprise here with that keyboard, they have changed the keys. They feel different. The travel feels a little different as well. So this is more like the Mi Notebook Pro's keyboard, which is a lot better. So they've made a slight improvement and changes here with the keyboard, and there's really no flex. I'm pushing down hard on that and just a tiny little bit of wobble. If anything, it's probably my table wobbling, but just a tiny little bit there. So overall, that's looking really good, that keyboard. Now, okay, the power button is where the delete button should be. So that may be an issue for some people. Sometimes I hit that, but you can set that to do nothing in Windows settings. Page up and down keys in the up and down arrow keys there via shortcut, but you know, I wish they were separate keys there. So they've made some restrictions here, some compromises with this keyboard due to the size. So it's not quite a full-size keyboard there. So this is the maximum that screen will recline back. Unfortunately, it doesn't go back as far as some notebooks out there. So some of them, you can lie the screen almost pretty much flat. So that's a slight disappointment in that area there. Now just down here, a little hard to see on camera. Well, there you go. You can see all the cooling vents. So just along there is where all the hot air will be expelled, and this is probably why that area tends to get very hot, but I'll be checking that out in this video. Moving on to the ports we have on this notebook, we have a full-size HDMI, USB 3 port, and then 3.5mm headphone jack with microphone support. On the right hand side is status LED, so this is red when you're charging, green once fully charged. A USB 3.1 port here with data, charging, and video out support up to 4K 60Hz, just like the Mi Notebook Pro, and then our second USB 3 port. So the screen's a fully laminated 1080p IPS panel, no changes there, just like the previous models, and it does have these bezels around the outside that are rather slim, but they're not Dell XPS 13 slim. And in that top bezel, you'll find a front-facing 2-megapixel camera with a little status LED next to it. When it's on, that will light up white, and 2 dual array microphones there at the top. One change I've noticed here too, at least I think I'm right in this, is that they've used rubber now, this little lip around the screen. That is hard plastic on the previous models, I'm pretty sure about that. So that's a nice little change there. So that will give contact, I guess, with the bottom there. When you close the lid, that's just to stop it from scratching around. So nice to have rubber lip there. They do that on a lot of other brands like Asus. So here we go, just in Windows 10 Chinese. I don't understand what it's saying, but this of course is just the Cortana setup of Windows. I'll jump and skip this of course and get right into how to get this into English. So here we are in the desktop now. I set it all up. You had to go through that painful Cortana process all in Chinese. Now the quickest way to get your Windows Pro license in here, I'll show you right now. So go to the start menu and you want to double tap on that mouse pad and then click this one here that says Y. And this will bring up our Windows system info, and then you need to just scroll down and then click on this link right here, and then right here is where you input your key to Pro, and that will start the upgrading process from going from Windows 10 Home Chinese to Windows 10 Pro, and then we can install English. So once that key is installed, you need to then accept this. Make sure you connect it up to the internet and it will start to download and upgrade. Now this whole process is going to take probably around about 30 minutes in total. So now Windows will reboot up, and when you get back into it, you'll have Windows 10 Pro. So go down to the search bar there in Windows 10 and just type in lang, so short for language. It'll come up then with that little icon. So click this. This is where we install our language pack. So I want English, so I'm going to hit plus here, and then just find English or French or German, whatever language you need. It will download and install that, then set it, and you're ready to go. Now if it's not downloading, go into options, which is this middle one right here, and make sure you click the little download link that'll be at the top here. Then you'll see that blue progress bar. Means it's downloading your language pack. Oh, almost forgot. You need to go back into this menu and then set it as default or remove Chinese. So here you can go along and just delete Chinese, but I'm going to set this one now as the default language, which it is now, and that'll be all ready. Once that downloads and reboots, then everything will be in English. Alright, so just to point out a couple of things here. There's some positives and some negatives. So one positive here is the touchpad. Unlike the 2016 model, this is using a precision touchpad drivers in Windows, so full control over the gestures. This is great. We had some haptics on the first model there, which wasn't as good, but it was still a really decent touchpad. So it's more or less on the same level as the touchpad you'll find on the Mi Notebook Pro. Now, there's a couple of things I want to point out too in the device manager, the fingerprint readers and ELAN, so that hasn't changed. And I already pointed out about that Samsung, the PM961. These are the speeds of it. I did benchmark it. So it actually comes out to be a little bit faster than last year's model. And this will vary, of course, from SSD to SSD, but really good speeds here. And it is running at the full ×4 speed on the PCI slot there. So that's great. No issues with that out of the box, unlike the Mi Notebook Pro. So just a couple other things here. So the wireless I pointed out was wireless AC 8265. That's really good. I won't benchmark that here, but I will in my full review. But it should get maximum kind of speeds. This is a really good chipset, that one there. And there are the 8 threads, the 4 cores of the i5-8250U right there. So the other thing too to point out, free space, around about approximately 188 gigabytes on first boot. I've installed the English language pack there, so that took up 2 gigabytes of that space. I have run a couple of benchmarks because I know a lot of people will be interested in this. So the performance of that NVIDIA MX is pretty much exactly the same as the Mi Notebook Pro and the previous generation. So last year's model, same GPU, same exact performance here when looking at the OpenCL score from Geekbench. The Geekbench 4 score here. So this comes out lower than the Mi Notebook Pro. They have, I feel, intentionally lowered the performance here a little bit, because if you have a look at the RAM, it's only running single channel. While the speed is 2.4 gigahertz, which is great, it's only single channel. So we're missing out on some RAM bandwidth, and that has affected the performance a little bit here. So it should be around 4,000. If this was dual channel, it would be about 4,100. Multi-core score then would be close to 14,000. So a little bit lower here, but this is still a huge step up from the 2017 model. So that had an i5 7200U, and it got approximately about 3,000 here for the single core score, and then the multi-core score is around about, just off the top of my head, 7,000. So it is quite a nice step up in terms of performance, the new 8th generation chips here we have from Intel. Now having a look at the display here, so really liking it. It has literally none of that IPS glow. I think I had a little on my previous models, but this screen I seem to have lucked out, as I mentioned earlier. You know, color reproduction is looking really good. I'm liking the contrast here, the deep blacks, because it's fully laminated as well. Glossy display, so yes, prone to reflections, but these stock images here that I took a long time ago on a Samsung Galaxy Note 4, they're looking excellent. I mean, this car was really a deep, saturated, oversaturated red, this Volkswagen Beetle. And yes, it's looking pretty good. But okay, yeah, the Galaxy Note 4 does oversaturate colors a little bit. But so far, this screen is looking really impressive. I will measure out the maximum brightness in my full review. So my first impressions of the touchpad and using it now for approximately 30 minutes, it's really almost exactly the same as the Mi Notebook Pro's one. So it's an excellent touchpad. It has like a glass surface to it, and it supports all those gestures, very accurate. Really do like it. It's just a little smaller, that's the only thing. And same goes for the keyboard. So it is similar now, the keyboard, to the Mi Notebook Pro, but not quite as good, I feel. Now, the typing experience on it, very comfortable. It is good, and is a step up from the previous last year's model and then 2016's model. A huge improvement in the keyboard, I feel. It is a step up there, but still just not quite as good as the Pro version. So exactly the same speakers, no change here from the other previous models. They're decent speakers, they're AKG tuned ones. I'll give you the sample of them right now.
It's also got Dolby audio, so you can tweak it to your own personal preference. So it's basically just like an equalizer here. Now some good news and some bad news here with the CPU. So we can't undervolt it, but we can still at least change the power limits here. If you wanted to increase them slightly, but you have to keep a close eye on the thermals. Now, Xiaomi actually locked us out of the Mi Notebook Pro on later BIOS revisions. They don't want us messing around here. I guess it's for warranty purposes. They don't want people generating too much heat, increasing those power limits. So for the moment, at least the power limits are unlocked here. Okay, so moment of truth there. I've been playing a game here. This is Project Cars on very high settings, 1080p, almost too demanding for the GPU. Just to get it really hot, I've also done a couple of CPU benchmarks, stress tests, and Intel XTU. Let's have a look and see how hot it is getting now. Alright, so 38 degrees. Now, if this was the earlier models, they would be up to almost 45, almost 50, but hang on, there we go, 43, it's getting up there. So I can see it has improved, but only by about 5 degrees this surface temperatures. Now I'll have a look around to the keyboard. The keyboard's heating up there to about 35 degrees. And then our touchpad is 28. Palm rest, sorry, touchpad's 26. And now the internal temperatures. So it's reached 81 degrees, the CPU. Now, I think that's okay, considering, remember, this has 2 more cores than previous model. But I don't know, it could actually get quite a bit hotter than this. So in my full review, I'll test it for hours on end. And we'll see what happens if the cooling can keep up with that. And then the GPU got up to 72 degrees. So that is okay. So really the internal temperatures I feel are fine. Surface temperature really is only about 5 degrees cooler, which may not seem a lot, but 5 degrees is actually quite a bit. It's a difference between 50, scorching hot, and 45, which I would say quite warm. Now, good news here for people that want to run Linux on this machine. It runs it perfectly fine. As far as I can tell, every single thing is working. So the brightness controls, the volume, the audio, internet, the battery meter, everything. Apart from the fingerprint reader. That's the only thing I haven't tested because I just don't have time at the moment.
So to answer that question there, so is this actually better, a step up over the 2017 model, which is the Kaby Lake? Yes, it is, and I feel it's definitely worth going for this if you can get it for a decent price, of course. You've got quad cores versus 2 cores, you have the improved cooling, so it's not getting as hot to the touch. So yes, Xiaomi have improved that cooling. I was a little bit worried thinking, hang on, they've gone from a dual core, they got up to 50 degrees Celsius to the touch just above the keyboard, quite hot, to now add 2 more cores, so quad core, I think, whoa, hang on, that's just gonna overheat. But so far, I'm glad that I'm wrong there, that it seems to be doing well. I mean, it gets up to 81 degrees on the CPU, which is starting to get a little hot, but that's still not too bad considering the dimensions and the cooling that this has in it. And then the GPU gets up to around about 72, 76 degrees, which is perfectly fine for an MX 150. So that is good. Now the other improvements, the color, love it. I love the darker gray. I think it just looks a little bit more professional. And I love the fact that it's minimalistic, just like the other 2 models. So you don't have any big logos, no backlit, big huge Xiaomi or Mi on the back of it, which I feel is a good move from them not to do that. And the touchpad, it's really good, great there. Another surprise is the keyboard, that it's slightly better, actually a step above the one on the previous generation model. So last 2 years, I found those keys were good typing on it, but this is just a lot more comfortable, and I like the feel of them and the actual keycaps. Better quality ones, so overall good improvements there. So the screen on it, to me, is actually better than the Mi Notebook Pro's screen. So there is some things that are better, but really the Mi Notebook Pro overall I feel is a much better model, even though it's larger, of course. So some people might not be looking for a 15.6-inch Ultrabook style with dedicated GPU, so they go for something like this. But of course we've got single channel RAM on here, which is a disappointment they've done that. So I feel it's Xiaomi just marketing team probably saying, no, limit it, make sure the performance isn't the same as the Mi Notebook Pro, so that means people have to go and buy that model, the more powerful model. So yes, it is more powerful, but we've got very similar specs now with the same CPU, the same wireless card. The battery life and things like that, of course, I'll have to test out in my full review. I'll come back to you on that. But these laptops, I do know from the previous ones, they charge super fast, which is another really good area in these laptops. So overall, it's really great. Looking forward to doing the full review on this model, and I do feel that yes, they've done quite an improvement on it. I mean, I did expect more. I was waiting for them to put like dual coolers on here. perhaps completely redesign it. So something like a Dell XPS 13, just make even slimmer bezels, slimmer it down, make it even lighter, even smaller. But maybe next year we're going to get that. But so far it's not disappointing, and I'm happy that my concern about the cooling doesn't seem to be too much of a problem, that the improved cooling is doing its job. But I will fully test that out because I haven't really done that at the moment. Even though I did the stress tests and running game for a while, I feel that I'm going to do some gaming for about 2 or 3 hours non-stop on this, then check back and see if it is going to reach 50 again, because it got up to 45. It's only 5 degrees less. So if you're looking at this model and then the 15-inch model, I say still go for the Pro, considering the price, it's about the same. But if you're looking at the 2017 model of this particular one with the Kaby Lake in it, the i5 7200U, then it's definitely worth it. If you can, go for this model because that increased performance, the look of it, the better keyboard, what I just covered there. So thank you so much for watching this review. If you haven't seen my review of the larger Mi Notebook Pro, then check out my review of the i5 model right here, and then the i7 model up here. And I do hope to see you back in the channel with the gaming review of this particular laptop, and then my full and final review and opinion. Bye for now.